Hi, I'm Kimberly Norris Guerrero, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damien and Ann.
Lord. Hello. Hi, Damien.
Hi, Ann, and hi, listeners.
You weren't sure what you were going to get. You were surprised by my tone and my use of Lord.
Lord, help us, and welcome
to another episode of You Might Know Her From with Damien and Ann.
I am Damien.
I am Ann. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. If you're a new listener, this is the show where we interview an actress each episode while we shoot the shit about pop culture, and sometimes we ask ridiculous questions that make actresses go, that's a weird question. That's how Leslie Ann Warren responded when I asked her, what was the question? We asked Leslie Ann Warren,
who would she choose to be in her maid of honor?
Of the people that she starred in Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater episode, The Dancing Princesses, and her options were Sachi Parker, Shirley MacLaine's estranged daughter, or Halloween icon Zelda Rubinstein. And or Shelley Duvall, of course, and she chose Shelley because she is an icon like her as well. So, you know, these are the sort of questions that we pose to serious actresses. I hope that you're along for the ride. We had an absolute blast with Leslie Ann Warren, but it was very illuminating because to us, Clue is one of our favorite movies. Damien and I are very simpatico. I think our entertainment Venn diagram is like a 92% overlap, and there are things where we differ and like blind spots for each of us that like the other one knows better than us, but Clue is very important to both of us. So we decided to pull Instagram and just see, like, is this a movie everyone has seen that knows us, or is it not? And let me just tell you, the results are in, and 84% of our audience has seen Clue, which is great. 16% said no, but let me tell you, Julia, longtime listener, friend of the pod, what she did that night, she was one of the no's. She went and made herself one of the yeses. She watched Clue that night. She said she loved it, and bless her heart. God bless you. Here I am bringing in Catholicism again. God bless you, Julia. I really appreciate the watch. So for those of you that were no's, have you watched it since? Let us know. It's just surprising to me because like it was a very important family film. To me, it was something that I watched like, you know, every couple of months growing up.
We were thinking of maybe doing some sort of, maybe we can do this when we are able to be in the same room again together. We could do a special, like, only about Clue episode. Would y'all listen to that? Would you like it?
Yeah, because I think our percentage is up higher than 84%. For that percentage, yes and no's, let us know if you'd be down for a special Clue episode, because I think we have a lot of opinions, and I'm ready to break out Shaboom and, like, the brandy snifter and really just go to town.
Yeah, we're ready to shake, rattle, and roll it. You know, so speaking of our Venn diagram, I love that you said that. I think speaking of the Venn diagram, which is so funny, is I think another thing I forgot what I was thinking about, but I was like, Desperate Housewives, like we are both interested in that. And I actually don't know that I ever finished it, but I was like very invested in it for like 5 or 6 seasons. Mm-hmm. And I similarly was like very invested in all of ABC's Sunday lineup, which was like Grey's Anatomy and Brothers and Sisters. Oh, and the other day you were like, well, that's when we like knew TV. And I laughed because I was like, oh, you're right. Like that's like when I sort of stopped watching like the things that everyone watched. Like now I sort of like watch, I get around to things. I totally skip on certain shows.
Oh yeah. I'm a year later on the morning show. It's like I let things pass me by in the zeitgeist and I go, that's fine. That's for others now. But yeah, there was a time where both of us like paid attention to what drama was happening behind the scenes. And so now like people that were on one episode of Desperate Housewives are like, Joyce Van Patten, how was the set of Desperate Housewives for you? She's like a multi-award winning actress. And we are asking her about like the drama on the Desperate Housewives set because yeah, that was what was
like
important
1994 to 2010. We basically like all we did was watch Netflix and like we were like virgins that we would like rent one movie at Hollywood Video and then another one on Netflix to complete the marathon of like whatever show we were watching.
Well, it was always frustrating when you had to wait that one day because you were like waiting for the delivery day, but like your content was caught up. So you're like, oh fuck, what am I going to do?
I finished this whole first disc of the L Word. I need the second. So I'll wait. I'll move the third one to the top of my queue and go to Blockbuster to get.
My God.
I literally did that. And I know that you did
same.
too. I know that was like, we both were like, I binged so many shows and that's how I watched it. I would have like one disc here,
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank God I started going outside more.
Right. No, I spent a lot of indoor hours. And I mean, I feel like now I have a frame of reference for, like you said, a specific like decade, basically, where I like know everything that happened in pop culture media. But of course, now tons of blind spots. But my friend Sean and I similarly would go to Blockbuster in Astoria, Queens. And we found out we were the only people that had ever rented the client list, discs 1 through 4, because when they closed, we asked if we could buy it. They were closing. And we were like, oh, sure. Let me just look up. We were the only people that had ever rented Jennifer Love Hewitt's The Client List the entire time at Blockbuster Video. So I felt proud of that.
I think Jennifer Love Hewitt might be on The Masked Singer.
Really?
It came back, and I was like, they guessed her, and I was like, I think it is her.
She's got a good voice. I kind of love Bare Naked. I think it's a great song. And she was also in the Enrique Iglesias video for Hero.
Did they date? They dated, I think.
I think that's right. She seems like he's her type.
And then she was also on Kids Incorporated. So
I loved Kids Incorporated. Speaking of zeitgeisty TV, I've been watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy as some research for a future episode and a future interview. I feel like that's pretty blind because there's been so many people that have been on Grey's through the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But here's the thing. I watched season 1, not in real time, but like let's say within the first couple of years of the show airing, I watched season 1 and part of season 2. And I was like, totally get it, into it, like the soapiness of it all. And then I've been going back to rewatch seasons for certain actresses. And it is so much more wild than I ever, like I knew about the like ghost and the singing and like I knew about some of the wild plot lines, but I just didn't understand that was like how every scene was. And I was like, this is way more wild than I thought. I'm very invested now in how crazy and over the top it is. And also all of the drama that was happening behind the scenes. It like seemed to follow the show for like 8 seasons. There was like a lot of behind the scenes drama.
100%.
I was just wondering if you think that like Shonda like now has her shows on lock and her actors have much tighter NDAs about like what they can and cannot say, because I felt like everything leaked from the Grey's set. Like everything came out. There was the Isaiah Washington like terribleness and TR Knight and then
Katherine
Heigl, like all of that.
I don't know. We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Folks, if you like what we're putting down, or if you don't, would you be so kind to leave us a review? Leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app is like the best way for us to find more people in our audience, more people who love sort of a specific type of pop culture, queer, lesbian pop culture, old Hollywood gossip, and of course, actresses. So leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app is the best way for us to keep doing this thing that we love to do for you. And if you don't love what we're doing, then like shoot us a DM and let us know, like give us some of that constructive criticism. Like don't put that down on that app because it will hurt us, but you can send us a little note and we will graciously listen to whatever you have to say. I mean, we're open to bringing on new guests and all of those things. The only thing that we're not open to doing is not being the hosts.
Let's bring in Mario Lopez. One of the exciting things about our project is that we get to sometimes watch something and then say, who's that? Let's get that person. And that's exactly what happened this week. For once, Damien and I were watching something that was in the zeitgeist.
Which we've talked about here, which was... And it was The Wilds, which we talked about here. Anne and her partner told me I must watch it. And then when I did, Anne didn't want to talk about it anymore. But we used it as a place to scout for talent and found this week's guest, Kimberly Norris Guerrero, who was an absolute pleasure. I do think before we start the interview, we should add maybe this, is it a pre-script maybe? Kimberly was on an episode of Grey's Anatomy. We did ask about it, but it didn't make the final cut. We cut it for time, but we do want to make sure that since we just talked about Grey's Anatomy a whole bunch, we feel like we should acknowledge this because we wouldn't want you to think that we didn't know that it was included in her oeuvre.
You might know her from The Wilds,
The Cherokee Word for Water,
The Glorias,
Son of the Morning Star,
Seinfeld,
Naturally Native,
and the original Broadway production of August Osage County.
We are here with actress and advocate Kimberly Norris Guerrero. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Oh, it's my joy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it really is our pleasure. Because, okay, I'm going to tell you the whole thing. So you appear in one of our current obsessions, The Wilds, an Amazon series about a random group of young women stranded on an island. It's been described by some as Lord of the Flies meets Pretty Little Liars, and you play Bernice, mother to Martha, who is one of the teens stuck on this island. you pop up in sort of the Martha backstory flashback scenes, and we immediately texted each other and said, who is this woman? She is very good. So now here you are.
Thank you.
On a show that hinges on so many secrets and reveals, how much were you told about your character, and what sort of backstory did you create to make Bernice?
It was a typical audition where you're just giving just the facts, ma'am. Like, this is who you are. These are your sides. And really, you usually given about a sentence about your character. But in this situation, there was so much in the text. So I did that scene and it was much longer. I'm doing this scene where I'm talking to Tony and talking to her about what happened and the abuse that went on. And it was so visceral for me because, we go through so much of that in Native America. Not that we're obviously, everybody goes through that. I mean, within each people group, we have that abuse going on, but it's really rampant, sexual abuse in Native America, even though it wasn't, within those contexts. It was this physical therapist. So it was it was very easy to go very deep, very quickly with that scene. But still, there was just a lot of visceral rage there for me. I wasn't given a lot, but what I was given was very, very juicy.
One of the things that we love about the show is that it sort of has this diverse ensemble cast of women, including 2 young Indigenous actresses, Jenna Claus and Arana James. We talked to previous You Might Know Her From guest Irene Bedard about the community she felt in Hollywood amongst other Indigenous actors. Did you feel any of that? And did you impart any of that on these young women who are sort of having their sort of first foray into the industry?
Yes, absolutely. Irene and I are like sisters. We kind of grew up together through this whole process, and we had that for each other, and we always had it we felt it from those that were older than us. So the Tantu Cardinals, Sheila Tausey, Graham Greene, Wes Studi, they really, took us under their wing. And I think we had that in us anyway, but it was also modeled for us. So we know we're part of a long line of that. I got my very first job because of Will Sampson, the famous Native American actor that you might remember from One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, and the film with Jack Nicholson. And so there was already this wonderful, warm, I have to say it, like a tribe within a tribe, right? Of Native folks that are in the industry. Being mentored and then mentoring has been something that's been really important to me for years. So it was just a very natural fit. When I went to New Zealand and was hanging out with Arana and with Jenna, it was, they were like my girls, like from the get-go. And it was like we hadn't even met and they already like were coming into my arms. Like, it's Bernice, we've been waiting for you. And so it was kind of an unspoken, just like, daughters I hadn't met yet. And we just went right in, very deep. And I think it really shows on screen. It's a kind of intangible je ne sais quoi of a knowing, of Arana being Maori and Jenna, of course, being First Nations, Native American. So, yeah. And ironically, I had just worked on another film in Jenna's territory up around Niagara Falls and worked with some of her cousins. I mean, like weeks before we worked. So we were even able to share that little bit. So,
cool.
And we're still very close to this day. We're communicating and checking in on each other. And so it's a really beautiful bond.
So we know that The Wilds has been renewed for season 2. Can you tell us first of all, can you tell us if Martha is alive? But also, 2, can you tell us if Bernice will make an appearance in season 2?
I would love to tell you anything that I know, but right now I know nothing. So my last communique with Jenna was, she's like, I hope I see you soon. And I'm like, I hope I see you soon too.
Your first high-profile job was in the 1991 miniseries The Son of the Morning Star, where you portray Kate Bighead, a real-life figure from the Battle of Little Bighorn. Mm-hmm. So the film uses Kate's narration by the iconic Buffy St. Marie to balance the point of view, since I think Custer's wife is the other narrator, so you're sort of trying to get both sides of this story.
Right.
You've mentioned in interviews that this miniseries opened up doors that led to roles in As the World Turns, Northern Exposure, and eventually Seinfeld. How did they find you for this film?
That is exactly my point when we were talking about Irene in our community. Will Sampson took think about it. It was really only Chief Dan George and Will Sampson and Jace Silverheels, but that his career kind of ended a bit earlier. But Will Sampson, who was a fantastic actor, he was living in Los Angeles, I guess maybe going back and forth between Los Angeles and Oklahoma, but he started the American Indian Registry, which was a registry for, back then we called ourselves Indians, Indian actors moving in from all over to Los Angeles to try to pursue careers in the entertainment industry. Plus, we have one of the largest numbers of Native Americans in Los Angeles proper. So it was something for Native people that were interested in the industry. There was a post that went up. I was born and raised in a teeny tiny town in Oklahoma called Idabel, and came out at 18 and went to school at UCLA, and immediately kind of started looking for the Indians, like, where's home? And so I went to the American Indian Library at UCLA, and I kind of found an auntie there, like V. Celebi, just a Navajo lady that worked in the library, and she became an auntie, and there was a professor there, still there, Hane Gigama, who's my mentor, who's a writer, producer, theater maker, just extraordinary intellect. And so that community just started kind of building out, and that's how I found out about the American Indian Registry and got signed up. And so a post went up on the wall, like, hey, they're looking for this Native girl, age 18 to 25, if you're interested, come and audition. And I didn't know what I was doing. I walked in there and I just winged it. But yeah, I was cast in that, and really learned so much. That was my very first, big role, and learned all my set etiquette and things like that from that movie.
So, so often Indigenous actors are tasked with performing historical trauma, in like these Manifest Destinies films and miniseries.
Yeah.
So it's really refreshing that I think one of your most recognizable credits is as Jerry's Native American girlfriend, Winona, on Seinfeld. You've said that comedy is the great equalizer and that you love doing it. Do people still recognize you as Winona on Seinfeld?
All the time. Yeah, it's just they want to, they want to like get, of course now we're quarantined, but they wanted the scene with me. One time I was with my family, we were doing a family cruise to Alaska, and we were in Ketchikan, Alaska, like walking through, and this guy completely freaked out with this girl, young, super cute. They were on their honeymoon, and he's like, "Wait, it's Winona." She's like, "Babe." He's like, "But it's Winona." And so then he started like doing the scene, and then I do the scene back, and forth with him, and it was just like he's like, you made her honeymoon. And so it's such a joy. It's such a joy to have been a part of that. And you're so right about that. I love the way you articulated that, especially in the midst of, because, when I was working on Son of the Morning Star, almost our entire company of Native actors had just come from Dances with Wolves. Almost to a person. They had just moved from Dances with Wolves to that. So we were kind of hot back then. And then it was that story being kind of told over and over, the Manifest Destiny story, that we're living in the past and we're quote unquote, being conquered. To be a part of that story with Tom Gamble and Max Prost wrote that script, and they went on to run Fox for many years. And Larry David was on set all the time. I worked with him every day and hung out with him, and just to get to be in Jason Alexander and Jerry and Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Michael Richards, and just to get to be in that company of that, level of comedy genius, it was so refreshing to get out of, and to be in the modern day and to be able to kind of poke fun at that, of this kind of sacred cow. I think one of the funniest moments of that entire episode is the Chinese mailman.
The mailman,
where Jerry's where, you must know where the Chinese restaurant, he's like, why must I know? Because I'm Chinese. And so it was, think about it. I don't even know if we could get away with that episode anymore in these days. Everything's so tender and, but it made a lot of great points without really, hurting anybody, or it was like, let's just talk about that. Let's just talk. Right? Let's just kind of try to see each other, put ourselves in each other's shoes, and really listen to each other.
Yeah.
Did that open any doors for you in terms of like getting seen for more comedic work?
Yes and no. It was still, we're talking, it aired the end of 1993, and it was still a very, I'm young, right? I'm in my mid 20s, and during that time, it was still a very, just to be honest, it was a very blonde-haired, blue-eyed kind of world. I'm at the ingenue stage, right?
Yeah.
And so even the comedic roles, I wasn't getting seen for anything because I looked like this. it just didn't compute. So I and Irene was very much in the same boat. We just got sent out just native role after native role after native role. It was like she'd get it, I get it, our friend Kateri would get it, our friend Georgina Lightning would get it. And so we really weren't being looked at for other things, or at least I wasn't. Irene may have been in a different boat than I was, but it was challenging. It was really sad because I had this beautiful experience with my dear friend Michael Gray Eyes a few months ago, getting to be on Rutherford Falls, which is the new Ed Helms comedy on Peacock. So it's Mike Schur, right? So it's, again, comedy at the tip top of the game. Our writer that week was a Schitt's Creek writer. And so it was just all the dialogue is just perfection. And I'm playing, my dear friend Michael Gray Eyes and have been working together for almost 30 years. And every time one of us dies, so this was the first time, we actually got to wear real clothes and nobody died. But it was just this great, great comedy. We're playing husband and wife. And it was like, it took that long. So that was the end of 2020. And the last time I got to play great comedy was 1993.
Hi.
So that's the reality.
In 2013, you portrayed another real person, Wilma Mankiller, in the independent film The Cherokee Word for Water. The film is a sort of biopic that chronicles Wilma's return to her hometown in Oklahoma and her work with the Bell Project, which brought 16 miles of water pipeline to the community and eventually would lead to her becoming the first woman elected principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. As a native Oklahoman who is part Cherokee, can you talk about what it meant to take on this iconic woman and also carry the weight of that film on your shoulders?
Well, there's two things. One, just, the first, just, she is an icon. And in the Cherokee culture, we have beloved women, and she's a beloved woman, which is a very special, sacred thing. It's it's a once in a generation kind of person, if not several generations. And so having only played native roles and getting that chance, it was the first time I was able to take on a role like this. And I felt the weight of it, being from Oklahoma, being of part Cherokee heritage myself, and just what she means to our community in general. So, it was daunting, but also I had just come off of a 2-year run on Broadway with Osage County. That was such a masterclass. And I put in my 10,000 hours, and, I think I did over 1,000 performances of Osage County on Broadway in Sydney and London. And then I did it in San Diego as well at the Old Globe. So having gone through that and kind of earned my stripes, my muscles were strong, and I was in a good place with my craft. And so I felt, there's the old adage in show business, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so the opportunity presented itself, but I felt prepared. To this day, it's the only time I've been number one on a shoot. And I felt Wilma with me. I felt Wilma saying, you can do this. I believe in you. When we started filming, that there was enough, of head knowledge mixed with heart knowledge. And then I had to just let it all go and let my spirit take over.
Well, it's kind of amazing because you portrayed Wilma again in The Glorias, which is the 2020 Julie Taymor film starring Julianne Moore and Alicia Vikander as Gloria Steinem, co-starring Janelle Monáe, Lorraine Toussaint, Bette Midler. What was it like to revisit, the icon? And was it a grueling audition process, or was it an offer because they were like, oh, we already saw her do this in the Cherokee Word for Water?
I got the call for the audition. I knew they originally wanted me to come in to audition for the stage version, The Glorias, A Life on the Road in New York. And I had just gotten my teaching job at UC Riverside and didn't feel like I could leave that early in my job. And so I didn't think I would have a chance at even auditioning. And then when it came around, it was like, at that time, Gary Oldman was playing Winston Churchill and, of course, won the Academy Award. And I'm like, it's like them doing another World War II show where Winston Churchill, and then hiring Gary Oldman to do it. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, what am I even thinking? Why am I fooling myself that I could possibly get to play Wilma Mankiller again? But I did it. So I put the audition together. It was so wild. I set everything up and I got started with it. My husband always reads with me. And I started to do this scene and immediately was overwhelmed with so much emotion because it was Gloria and Wilma. And in the Cherokee Word for Water, Gloria was one of our executive producers, and I saw her at the screening at Lincoln Center in New York, and we have gotten to know each other and become some, at least lovely acquaintances, if not friends since. But the amount of love that came rushing into me for Gloria, I mean, the second that I, as Wilma, was talking to Gloria, it was this otherworldly, I love this woman so much. And all of a sudden I understood, oh, this is a love story. This is a love story between Wilma and Gloria, and how much friends can love each other. It was a really beautiful moment when this beautiful seed of Wilma that had been planted in me, all of a sudden I revisit it years later, and there's just flowers and fruit everywhere and all this deep, deep knowledge. And Julie Taymor said, hey, look, I realized we were going to be moving quickly, and we're meeting all these iconic people. And so it was a no-brainer to me to bring in two people that knew Charlie and Wilma, that had played Charlie and Wilma, and they already had that rapport to reprise their role. So to get to be back with Moses Brings Plenty as Charlie, it was such a joy. It was so easy to slip back in, and yet I felt the weight. There comes back the weight of, sister, you better knock it out of the park, because Wilma would have.
So one of the great things about the podcast is we get to sort of discover new things about an actor. And so we were so excited about the 1999 movie Naturally Native, written and directed by Valerie Red Horse Mall, starring you, Valerie, and Irene Bedard as sisters trying to start your own natural cosmetics line while navigating the sort of racist world of business loans and finance. So the story illustrates the United States sort of like bureaucratic, racist red tape related to allocating funds and resources for tribal communities. And to us, this was really illuminating, in particular because this was the first film to ever be fully financed by a Native American tribe, which is incredible. Based on our research, in real life, you're an enrolled Colville from Washington State and also part Salish, Kootenai, and Cherokee. You were adopted by a white family in Oklahoma and have spoken plainly about how your birth mother left you your tribal papers so you would be able to connect to your lineage as you grew older. So can you talk a little bit about when you were exploring this, if you had to face any of the sort of bureaucratic struggles that were illustrated in the film?
Not in that particular way of reconnecting with my biological family and all of that, but you see it consistently. I would say I saw it more. Again, going back to the mentorship thing, I started working out on reservations back when I was on As the World Turns, because all the Indian grandmas used to watch As the World Turns. And so that was their show. So I started getting these calls like, can you come talk to our kids on San Carlos Apache? Can you talk to our kids on Pine Ridge? Can you talk to our kids in Lower Burl, South Dakota? And so that was something that became a very important part of my life. So it was in those times that I would start seeing the bureaucracy and the extraordinary double standard and the extraordinary amount of, still to this day, which is why Deb Holland's approval is so important for us. Native Americans are the only people group that aren't with all the other people in America. We are not in Health and Human Services, is that what HHS? We're not even with the humans. We're in the Department of the Interior. I have no problem with that because I love being with the forest and the animals, and the land. I think that's very symbolic. And yet at the same time, it is dehumanizing that we can't be with other people, other fellow Americans. So it was just a wake up call to things like that, seeing, monies and corruption. I had this little stint, talk about Valerie Red Horse, strange little stint. My husband played a really wonderful reggae band, and one of his biggest fans was a stockbroker in New York, and he had this idea that he wanted to start a Native American stock brokerage. Valerie worked with stock brokerages, and so I was like, Valerie, we should check this out. So somehow I got wrangled in to being part of the stock brokerage, and I got my Series 7 and my Series 63, and I was meeting with like all of the top executives at Citibank and Deutsche Bank, but in doing this, I was like, okay, I can't do anything if I can't put my whole heart into it. So I needed to understand what the situation was. So this is something interesting that I think exactly to your point. So I would say be working with this little, when I say little, I mean just a small band of natives, say in Michigan. and they were trying to build a community center. So they would go, right? They've grown up kind of in the same like high school little area with everybody. So they're like going to their high school buddy that now owns the bank in town to get the loan for the new community center at the tribe. They're charging them 24% interest on a corporate loan. And it's just like, are you kidding me right now? And just everywhere I was going, I was seeing that. And I was seeing the fact that we're just starting to see the casinos start to kind of take over, and tribes actually start to make money, and their money being mismanaged. People not investing in a good way. It was just really being taken advantage of. So that really gave me a great opportunity to go in and fight. And we're talking really about colonization, right? The effects and the consequences of generational trauma, historical trauma, and colonization.
Yeah.
It's in my own body. I feel it I carry it with me. But I'm telling you, in 2021, we're waking up.
So as you mentioned, you were in the original 2007 Steppenwolf production of the family drama August Osage County, which transferred and became a smash hit on Broadway, and then went on to win the Tony Award for Best Play and the Pulitzer for Drama. Mm-hmm. You portrayed Johnna, the live-in housekeeper, who's the last one left standing with Violet at the end of the piece. Was it challenging to portray this character that somewhat silently lives and works within this abusive and dysfunctional white family?
Yeah, it was. What was interesting was when I got the call, I turned it down 3 times. 3 times, I just like the first 2 times I ignored it. The third time I said, I'm sorry. I'm just not in a good place, right now to take on this role. I had been back in Oklahoma with my adopted mom, Kay, and she was dying of lung cancer. And so I had moved back to Oklahoma, and I was taking care of her, and I helped her pass away. She was sick for about 6 months, and walked her through that whole thing. I mean, things you never thought you'd do, especially with your own mom, and it changed me fundamentally. And I was so grateful to have been there. Ironically, and unfortunately, my husband's dad, who I adore, also had liver cancer at the same time. So I came home to California and then helped him pass away. So I spent the last 3 nights of his life up with him all night, trying to help him make his journey. And then my audition was like, he passed away on a Monday, and the audition was on Wednesday, and I was exhausted. And I called them up and I said, I can't come in for the audition. And you're going to see a lot of great girls. I know who you're looking at, and there's going to be somebody wonderful. And the casting director from Steppenwolf called back and said, no, you have to come in. And she said, I know it's a stretch here. I know I'm going out on a limb, but I just have a feeling your father-in-law would want you to do this. And he totally would. Like, I married into the Guerrero family. Guerrero means warrior. It's like, get out there and, And my mom, my adopted mom, when I was turning it down before, I'm like, Daddy, I can't go. I was telling my dad I grew up with, I'm like, I can't go audition for freaking Steppenwolf. I haven't been on stage since, I think my last production was Steel Magnolias in Nashville. It'd been 7 years before or something like that. I can't go, but it's Steppenwolf. Like, I'm going to go stink the place up, And so Daddy said to me, he goes, I don't know. He goes, Kim, think about it. Think about it. He's like, your mom, how your mom, loved theater. And she was a director, a little community theater director. And she was so good. And he's like, maybe this is your mom's way of saying it's time to get back on stage. And I was like, well, thanks, Dad. Now I have to go, audition. And so I had been through this long process with it. So by the time I went in to audition, I was so beat down, but I had this story in my bones. It was like I was an Indian girl taking care of a white lady dying from cancer in Oklahoma. And so it's like, okay, you may not be able to stand toe-to-toe with Jeff Perry and Amy Morton and Rondi Reed and Sally Murphy and Miriam Mayberry and Fran Guinan and all the rest of the pantheon of Steppenwolf, but you can tell the story. And so I went in there and did it and got the role. And, the rest is really profoundly history. A poignant postscript to that is that Tracy Letts's precious father, Dennis Letts, had to take over for one of the actors that was supposed to play the role of the father because he got cast in a film. Dennis came in the last minute. So it was Dennis and I. And Tracy grew up about 70 miles from me in Oklahoma. And so his dad and I were just, it was like old home week. And, we're the first 17, 18 minutes of the play. That prologue is very long and very, it's the only time you get to know Beverly Weston, the patriarch. And so it was a really precious, everything was just very everything was just synchronizing so beautifully. It was a really powerful moment. And then unfortunately, before we moved from Chicago to Broadway, Tracy's dad also was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, which was exactly what my mom had just passed away from. So we walked Dennis through that. I had the good fortune of being on stage with him the very last time he performed in his son's play. And it was like nothing I've ever seen. It was transcendent. It was a Sunday matinee. We finished on Sunday matinees, and he knew, and I knew this was it. And it was just the most extraordinary thing. And when Dennis ended up passing, well, I mean, just his presence, even before he passed, even when he had to go back home to Oklahoma to make his journey, it was with us. And I question if it's not just in the whole play, like wherever they do it around the world, there's like something of Tracy and Dennis, because it is Tracy's story. It's their family's story. So it was a very, very profound thing. And it's a very prophetic play. I mean, I hate to say it. It's a very prophetic play. And to be on stage every night, every day at the matinee, day in and day out, singing, "This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends." I did not take that lightly. Every day that I sang that, I treated every performance like a ceremony, like medicine. Like in a medicine way. It's like good medicine. This is bitter medicine, but it's good medicine. It's the truth. And I think we all felt that way. I think anybody that does that play feels that way. It's a very special story.
The play was turned into a film starring Meryl and Julia Roberts in 2013 with, I don't believe, any of the original theatrical cast reprising their roles. Mm-hmm. Was that frustrating? Like, did they ask any of y'all to audition, to your knowledge?
I believe the two people... I believe, I could be wrong on this, I believe it was just Rondi and myself that auditioned for it. Originally, our dreamy dream was that Warren Beatty had come with Annette Bening to see the show and was so blown away, and he was talking about producing it with the original cast, with him directing. No, he wasn't going to do, I'm sorry, he wanted executive producing, he wanted Anna to direct. He's like, I want everything you're doing here, and we're going to put it in a movie. And so we got really, really excited. And then for whatever reason, it didn't happen, because that's just how Hollywood works. And then it became what it became. And I did go into audition, and I had a really great time in there with the casting director. And we were chatting about the role and about this and that. And he was like, again, it was that moment. He's like, why did you just do that? Like, why did you just make that choice? And I was telling him like all this backstory, for myself, like, this is just where she's from. This is what he's like, oh my God, it's so fascinating. And I'm like, it is, right? Like, because it was a joy for me. I know I'm digressing a little bit here, but it was a joy for me, like every day, to get to bring my Native American friends and their moms and their aunties and their grandmas. I brought them into Johnna every day. And I was really like, the parameters are so broad for Johnna, because she's so quiet. I'm like, whose story I'm going to be telling today? Some days it was like my friend's auntie who, was just quiet, and she just put her head down and work and hardly say two words. And that's the way I'd play. That was Johnna that day. Mm. And then other days, my girlfriends on the cast, their favorite Johnna was basketball Johnna. So like I had these girlfriends who were like really badass, like Native American basketball players. I'm like, what? This is what I do. It's so when I was doing that scene with Amy, I'm like, I need the work. She's like, why do you do this? Like, I need the work. And then other days it was like, I had all this, these stories are like, I'm this young woman trying to take care of not my kids, my mom's kids. And and then it's like, I need the work, with tears in my eyes. Please don't fire me. I have to do this. I got to take care of my little brother, my little sister. That's a real story. So I was able to take all these different characters and seed them into this role. So going back to the film, we were just talking about that. And then it didn't go my way. And a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful young actress named Misty Upham played Johnna. And Misty is one of our tragic missing and murdered Indigenous women's stories. And none of us really know even how to process that, because Misty now would be probably our first Academy Award winning actor. She would have definitely nailed one of these roles in Killers of the Flower Moon, aka Great Horse, that Martin Scorsese is directing, upcoming this summer. And so that tragedy will never leave us. And I hope that we can just, continue to fight for other missing and murdered Indigenous women on her behalf. But I'm glad that she was there and was able to be a part of that. But all that said, I can't watch the movie. I've never watched it. It's too sacred of a thing for me. And I just, I just can't. I can't do it.
I think that's fine. I will say I think that's fine based on having seen the movie. Okay, Kimberly. This is the part of the show that we like to call the rapid fire. It's rapid fire for us. You can take as much time as you need, but it just allows us to fire off some one-offs at you. Okay. I've always been drawn to folks with an Oklahoma accent, mostly because my Aunt Connie's from Oklahoma and I love the sound of her voice. Once you started acting, were you ever pressured to lose your accent? And what is the word that sounds most Oklahoman coming out of your mouth?
Yes, I was pressured to let go of my Oklahoma accent. It took me a long time to get rid of it. It was basically humiliation at UCLA because my whole goal to go to UCLA was I would be anonymous in this group of 30,000 college students. Nobody's going to pick me out of the crowd. But I came in and said, "Hi, I'm Kiiim. How you doing?" And then people would laugh at me on campus and they would point at me and go, "That's the girl. Get her to say something." I'm like, "Hi." So I would say probably, "Hi, I'm Kiiim." Double syllable, not Kim, Kiiim. Hi, I'm Kiiim. And then so I think it's the humiliation got that. And then when I started acting, I'm like, you really need to find a neutral accent, sister, because, and it still creeps in.
Kimberly, go with me on this. You co-starred in the 2020 film The Dark Divide, which has a whole bit about Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. You also starred in the 2012 movie Dog Man about a mysterious woodland creature that is attacking animals and humans. So, fuck, marry, kill the following cryptids: Bigfoot, the Jersey Devil, and the Loch Ness Monster.
What am I supposed to do with these three? Because I believe in them all. So what happens? What am I supposed to do with these three?
I believe in them. I love you. I believe in them too. This is where this question came from. You have to choose one to fuck, one to marry, and one to kill.
Okay. This is great. I'm going to marry the Loch Ness Monster because I love water.
I think it seems sweet.
Yeah, Nessie is the way to go.
Yeah. Nessie seems sweet.
And then I can become like a mermaid monster thing, dolphin thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Kill the Jersey Devil.
Okay.
And then, of course, do the nasty with Bigfoot, right?
We got to see. Okay. Kimberly, you play a blackjack dealer in a season 5 episode of The Sopranos. From our research, you are a California resident, and it seems like chronologically this aired before you were in New York doing August Osage County. So My question is, did they fly you from LA to be in The Sopranos for this moment where you were sort of like dealing?
This is one of those random moments when me being native and not getting an opportunity worked out in my benefit. So Peter Bogdanovich is casting, right? He's directing this piece. It's one line.
Oh my God.
I'm working up on the Bishop Pirates, probably with Tosba Chavez and all of the little film crew up there. And I get this call from my agent. They want you to put this line on tape and send it in. I'm like, dealer has 20? Like, seriously? I'm like, okay, And I mean, I'm just like, sure. I mean, I'm thrilled. Like, there are no small parts, only small actors. I'm like, yes, hook me up on The Sopranos. So I send it in. I get the role. I come to set. I say, they fly me up, put me in a beautiful hotel in New York City. I get on the train and go up to Queens to Silverwood, the studios. Walk in. Freaking Edie Falco's there waiting for me. I mean, she just happens to be coming out. Hi, I'm Edie. Like, it's so nice to have you. I don't know if y'all know this, but The Sopranos was the kindest, nicest, warmest set I have ever been on.
I love that.
And everybody, and David Strathairn and I worked together on Son of the Morning Star, so we were getting to catch up. And then I finally go in for my scene. Dealer has 20. I had to learn how to deal blackjack, which I've never done in my life. There's a real Atlantic City blackjack dealer teaching me how to do it. And then everybody comes in. Peter Bogdanovich comes in. We do our little thing, and afterward, Peter and I are walking back. Peter, like I know him, we're walking back through the sound stage. And I said, "Mr. Bogdanovich, may I ask you?" And he had this kerchief on and everything, like just like you want him to have. I said, "I just have to have one question." I go, "Why did you fly me in all the way from California to say dealer has 20?" And he turns to me. He says, "Because, baby, I only work with the best, and you're the best. And he literally walked off, and I was just like, thank you, Peter Bogdanovich. I knew I was good. Dang it.
Oh my God.
I know. It was epic.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
We almost cut that question, and I'm so glad we kept it. That is so satisfying.
It was so, baby, we only work. I know. I was like, oh my, I can't believe this happened. And I got to work with Steve Buscemi and
Oh God.
and all of the guys, most of the guys, Michael Imperioli and Steve Buscemi, they understood that I was Native American playing a Native American role, but the other Italian folks didn't like it. So like a big Polly Walnuts, and they were all at the table, and they're just like, fucking Indians, man, these fucking casinos making all this. I mean, what the heck? And they're like, it was like the Seinfeld episode, but in real life. So Steve Buscemi and Michael Imperioli are just like the colors draining from their face. Finally, I think it was Steve Buscemi was like, fellas, I think our dealer here is actually Native American. Like, no, fuck me, no, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then it was just like, but what was cool was that, because I'm basically a day player, right? They're like, oh my God, like, you got to come to lunch with us. So then I got to sit at the table with the fellas, and I got to like hang out with them like all day because they made fun of Native Americans and they weren't making fun. They were just,
they were racist. They thought you were Sicilian.
And they were like, you got to call us a wop. They were coming up with all these,
Oh my God.
It was great. They're like, you got to call me this, call me that. Yeah, call me. Like, I don't want to. Yeah, it was great. It was the best day. It was the best day.
Oh my God.
Whew.
Okay.
All right. Kimberly, you have 2 credits opposite legendary actor Ernest Borgnine. We were so shocked. The first is Barn Red, where you help him maintain his farm property against these predatory developers. And the other is Frozen Stupid, where you play a rugged woman who meets Ernest while ice fishing.
Yeah.
How was he on set? Was he a talker? Did he impart old Hollywood wisdom? Was he weird? Did he talk about his apparently terrible marriage to Ethel Merman? What was that experience?
Ernest Borgnine did all of the above. Does that make you so happy?
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
He is if you could choose an actor from old Hollywood that would tell you everything you ever wanted to know, Ernest, and be really cool about it, and not creepy and proud and like, oh, come and like, you want to touch my Oscar, little girl? I mean, just like, just a great, if your grandpa was on Hollywood and he could tell you all the old stories about Betty Davis name it, because he worked with all of them and started on Broadway.
Yeah.
Came from vaudeville to Broadway. So, and I really got to know Ernest well over the years and would go visit him in Los Angeles, go, up at his house off Mulholland. And we would be in a lot of times when we'd fly back to Michigan to do these films together, we would meet up in Denver and then we would fly in together. So we would meet he'd get me in the executive club in Denver because you're not supposed to do that, but he's Ernest Borgnine. Just like, she's with me. And he would say that she's with me, and whatever he did, people would just do for him. He'd walk through the airport, like DIA, walk through the airport, and it was just like the crowds would part and everybody would, he'd like, hey, how's it going? Hi, everyone. And just so kind and big spirited and generous, and just never, always had time for everybody, always was the last one to leave a room if people wanted autographs or to talk. Sit with us for hours. It was hard to get back on the set and work because we'd all be sitting at lunch, chatting about Ethel Merman or chatting about, this or that. He was telling, one of his favorite stories to tell is in Ethel Merman's biography. She has a chapter on, it just says Ernest Borgnine. And then there's nothing.
It's a blank page.
It's a blank page. That's one of his favorite stories to tell. But I will say this, when he was talking about Ethel Merman, he was incredibly kind.
Aww.
So, it's this is why I think it didn't work out. She was in a situation and, it wasn't like this crazy lady, blah, blah, blah. It was always what's the context? What is the context? What got that person to that point? And so there was just always a very generous, warm, kind spirit behind everything. And you could literally throw anything at him. It'd be like, Ernest, Marilyn Monroe. All right, so the one time I'm with Marilyn Monroe at the Brown Derby, and we walk out, and of course all the press is and she's just done this picture, blah, blah, blah. And we're walking out, and the press is going mad. Marilyn, what did you have for dinner? And she would turn to her manager and she'd say, what did I have for dinner? Filet mignon. I had filet mignon. fun. What are you going to do this weekend for the blah? What am I going to do this weekend for the holiday weekend? You're going to see friends and play board games. I'm going to see friends and play board games. I mean, just, so he's like, he had a story on everybody. Oh. But again, always really, really warm-spirited. I mean, his Betty Davis stories were just all so good. So good. He saw it all.
I love that so much. I love that he was generous, not creepy, the best kind of old Hollywood.
Best kind of old Hollywood.
Kimberly Guerrero, thank you so much for being on You Might Know Her From. This has been an absolute pleasure. You've been so great. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you both. This was so much fun.
Okay, I have to say, those Italian Americans just being
God.
racist as fuck and then being like, oh, wait, what? You're not Sicilian? Okay, you got to eat dinner with us. Call us fucking WAP. Call us a fucking Dago. Kimberly was, well, I don't know. It's all so hard on Zoom, but I felt like her warmth and her, I don't know, generosity really like radiated through the computer screen. It was, I felt a really special interview. I feel like we really like uncovered things that we've never talked about here. And it was really amazing to get to uncover some of these like new finds in her body of work. But boy, oh boy, bless Michael Imperioli and Steve Buscemi.
Also, great callback to the Ernest Borgnine Ethel Merman single page of her bio, which we talked about back in our episode with Jessica Hecht.
Yeah, she was like, wow, you guys have a lot. I mean, it was really you. You were like, oh, did he ever talk about?
How were we even talking about Ernest Borgnine? I do not remember how it came
Because he was a series regular on The Single Guy, which is one of her biggest credits, television credits.
Right.
He was the doorman in Jonathan Silverman's building.
Look, if I see Ernest Borgnine on an IMDb collaboration with an actress, better bet I'm going to be talking to her about it. Because he is important to me. He's in The Wild Bunch. He's in Marty. He's in the fucking Poseidon Adventure, one of the greatest movies of all time. Anyway, I love this show. It's what I love. I hope you love it too. We love having you here. One of the things we need to do that we started playing around with is connecting this week's guest to next week's guest. So, Damien, do you have that for us? I think you have a surprise for me.
Okay, so Kimberly was on The Wild, much discussed here on this show. Also starring Rachel Griffith, who starred on Broadway in Other Desert Cities with Judith Light, who was on Transparent with next week's guest.
Love that so much. Folks, thanks for being a part of the show. We love you. We miss you. We hope you're staying safe. Please, you know what to do. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. That's where we talk about Clue and Ernest Borgnine. You can find us at Damien Bellino and at Rodeman. That's my last name with my first name, Rodemanne.
You Might Know Her From is produced by, guess who? Us. That would be Ann Rodeman and Damien Bellino.
And we want to thank, as always, our beautiful consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That's Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. They're incredible humans, husbands who keep us sane and motivated, and they cross our T's and dot our I's and keep our shit together. And all the editing you hear on this episode and every episode is by the incredible, the beautiful, the wonderful, the tremendous Daniel Sears.
We also want to thank Gang. Gang is 3/4 women, and Gang is from Philly. We love Gang, and their music underscores each and every one of our episodes. So if you like what you hear with Gang, you can stream and download them wherever you listen to your music. And for me, that would be Spotify, but for you, that might be something else. Find Gang there, listen to their music. Thank you to the great Gang. Right now, you look like a Koopy doll.
Okay, first of all, you said Koopy, like my dad says puberty. It's Kewpie with a liquid U. And thank you. That is my high school mascot. I went to David H. Hickman High School in Columbia, Missouri. Kewpie is their mascot. We're the only Kewpies. That's a naked baby. We're the only Kewpies in the entire nation, maybe the world. And our mascot was a giant naked baby that went running around the football field.
Do you know who was in the mascot costume at any of the 4 years you were in high school? Shout them out.
No, literally no, zero people. I have to say I didn't go to any of the sports games, honestly. I was very wrapped up in what role I was getting in Anything Goes, I could not be bothered with sports during high school. I was athletic in the earlier years, and I pushed that to the side to concentrate on musical theater.
Sarah Parks, if you're still listening to the podcast, who were the mascot the 4 years that you were in high school, please send me all 4 of their names. Maybe it's one, but just send them to us.